We're returning to the Armstrong Powerhouse stable to look at what I consider to be one of their better products. This is the Class 205 diesel-electric multiple unit, otherwise known as Thumper, but not because she was a strange red machine whose work unintentionally prompted Boulder to fall off its perch and start a rampage on the Skarloey Railway. The Class 205 Thumper was released for TS Classic in August 2016, and the pack is still available to buy from AP's website almost 10 years later, but it now costs £25, or around 54 New Zealand dollars, at full price. That's an increase of £5 over the original price. As for what you get in this pack, we'll start off with the liveries, of which there are an impressive 11. Covering the 205s from their introduction in September 1957 through to their retirement in December 2004, with at least one preservation-era livery to boot, but it's not 205-009 in chocolate and cream. The liveries that are included are as follows: BR Green with an orange V at one end, BR Green with small yellow panels, BR Green with full yellow ends, BR Blue with small yellow panels, BR Blue with full yellow ends, BR Blue and Grey with the pre-tops number, BR Blue and Grey with tops numbers and little Network Southeast decals, the full Network Southeast livery, Rail Track, which has a power car at both ends for some reason, Connex, in clean or weathered states, and BR Blue for 205-001, as preserved at the East Kent Railway. The Rail Track livery wasn't included with the pack right off the bat. Instead, it was added as part of an update released soon after the base pack. It's worth mentioning that, as of July 2022, the East Kent Railway's 205-001 now has full yellow ends instead of the small yellow panels that she has in TS. But this is how the real thing looked at the time of the add-ons development. And if you're wondering what the little black triangle was for, this was a marker to let platform staff know which end of the unit had the guards compartment. It was a common sight on Southern Region slam door units, not just the 205. Geordie Bloomberg did the modelling and textures for the Class 205, and from what I've seen of his work, I am of the opinion that he's a good modeller, for the most part. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of that 700, to be honest. I'll go so far as to say that the 205 has one of the best looking cabs I've ever seen in TS, and it puts a lot of Dovetail's cab models to shame. Amongst other features, the head code box is accessible, and you can even change the head code in driver mode instead of only in the scenario editor, as was the case on the old RSC era Class 421 for SIG and Class 423 for VEP models. Incidentally, I'd be interested in seeing new versions of the 421 and 423 in TS, ideally with models that are done to the same standard as the Class 411 for SEP that AP made. For the longest time, AP's trains didn't have passenger views, for whatever reason, and the Class 205 was one of their first packs I remember that broke the mould, so to speak. In this case, the passenger view is in the power car, and you can clearly hear the engine working away from here. It's a pity that there aren't any passengers modelled for this interior view. As an aside, I noticed that the 205 looks incredibly similar to the Class 415 for EPB, although the latter doesn't have a whacking great big engine room in one of the driving coaches. Now if only Dovetail's 415 could have been done to the same standard as the Thumper, and AP's more recent Class 411 for that matter, in terms of its modelling, textures, sounds, and features. The same can easily be said about the Class 402-2 HAL, which happens to be another mediocre DTG product, and come to think of it, neither the 415 nor 402 have ever gotten any kind of improvements from AP. One major downside to AP's Class 205 pack is the absence of a unit numbered 205-205. The real thing is based at the Epping-Ongar Railway, who are even credited in the add-ons manual, and she differs from a standard 205 by way of a corridor connection between the two coaches, fluorescent lighting strips in place of the old tungsten lights, and having the original control desks replaced by standard Southern Region EMU desks, amongst other modifications. 205-205 was the only example of her class to be fully refurbished in the aforementioned manner. Now we turn to the sounds, and I'll start this segment by pointing out the fact that the 205 has a different horn for each cab, but I have no idea why. Based on what I remember from one of AP's Facebook posts years ago, they recorded most of the sounds for this pack from a 207, not a 205. And more recently, I learned that the horn for the driving trailer cab was recorded from the preserved 205-001, and the horn in the driving motor cab was used again in the Class 411 pack. Regardless of what specific units the sounds came from, the 205 in TS Classic still sounds pretty good, especially where the engine is concerned. This is why they were nicknamed Thumpers. As you're driving along in the Class 205 with the season set to summer, you'll sometimes get fly splatter on the windscreen. I don't think DTG ever had tiny details like this on their trains. Other features on the Thumper include, but are not limited to, the needle on the brake pressure gauge moving a little bit when you blast the horn, passenger doors opening and closing at random when you're at a station, instead of all doors opening at the same time, condensation building up on the cab windows if you've got the heater on and no windows open, a functioning cab secure radio module, which was a predecessor to the modern-day GSM-R, and a realistic combination electro-pneumatic and auto brake. I recommend reading the manual for the full list of features. The 205 also has a realistic cold start procedure, with details on how to prepare the unit from cold being found in the manual. One thing I always remember about the cold start procedure is watching the brake pressure build up, and noticing that the horn doesn't work until there's enough air in the main reservoir. The procedure reminds me of the old AP/Railright Class 40, which also had the option to be prepared from cold. And coincidentally, the Class 40 also had an English Electric prime mover, albeit one that was considerably more powerful than what the Thumpers have. In saying that, the Class 40s actually ended up being underpowered for their size. Another thing I remember from driving the Class 205 is that these units are a bit weak, and can struggle to climb hills as a result. Indeed, when I drove a pair of Thumpers up the climb from New Cross Gate to Honor Oak Park, heading for East Croydon, they wouldn't accelerate on the 1 in 100, and lost a noticeable amount of speed as a result. Such is the nature of prime movers that can only put out around 600 horsepower each. Yet another thing that's worth mentioning are the different cabs at each end of the unit. When you're driving from the power car end, you can clearly hear the English Electric 4 SRKT Mark II prime mover roaring away behind you. It's a totally different experience when you're in the driving trailer cab, where it feels more like a standard EMU, such as the previously shown Class 415, because you can't hear the engine at all. The Class 205 pack also comes with 6 scenarios, 2 for London to Brighton and 4 for the South London network. Said scenarios take place during the final few years of regular service for these units. More specifically, one scenario is set in 1999, while the others are set in either 2003 or 2004. All 6 scenarios feature suitable rolling stock for their respective time periods as AI traffic, and these scenarios involve 205s on the London to Uckfield service, empty stock moves into and out of Selhurst Depot, and even a farewell rail tour on the Brighton Main Line. There are 12 add-ons required for the Class 205 scenarios, besides the Thumper itself. The total cost of all the requirements is $510.82 NZD, or around £234.94, so do with that information what you will. That total cost includes the price of the base packs required for the Class 375/377, Class 455 Volume 1, and Class 465 Volume 1 enhancement packs. On the plus side, the requirements are easy to find, as AP generally only use rolling stock that's available on Steam or their own website. I once found a scenario where you drive the strange Railtrack variant, but I can't remember where I downloaded it from or what route that scenario was on. In any case, AP have yet to release any scenarios for the 205 on their Powerhouse app, and I haven't seen this unit as AI traffic in the scenarios that come with the Class 465 Volume 1 enhancement pack. However, there are at least 2 other packs whose scenarios do require the 205 for AI traffic, namely the Class 319 EMU pack Volume 2 and Class 455 Enhancement Pack Volume 1. Although I've been singing the Class 205's praises throughout this video, that doesn't mean I've suddenly become an Armstrong Powerhouse fanboy again, but even then, they still deserve credit where it's due. I think the Class 205 Thumper deserves an 8 out of 10 for her modelling, sounds and features, which are particularly impressive when you remember that this add-on is the better part of 10 years old. If you like older slam door multiple units and want something a bit out of the ordinary, then the Class 205 is worth a try.